Season. Afghanistan is going through a crisis. Every winter the weather will reach temperatures as low as minus 18 degrees Celsius. With little finances and homes not adequate enough to keep the heat in, many families struggle during this season. The elderly are vulnerable and physically challenged to fight the cold during these days and nights. Young children must walk through snow and ice in order to get to school and return to a chilly and bitter cold home. Imam Hussein Development and Relief Foundation are determined to help. We will be providing households with coal to burn throughout the winter. $150 is all we need. $150 will be enough to provide heat and warmth for one household for the whole of winter. That's $150 for 4 months. You can donate via PayPal, bank transfer, or visit us at www.ihdrf.org to make a donation. Our Imams tell us the best of you are those who help those who are desperate. Help us spread the warmth. Thank you.
We question our daily position, seeking answers and definitions. Get the queries off your chest with Ahkam SOS.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome to Ahkam SOS, the show that discusses Islamic duties and practices. Now, this is a live show. We do take in your questions. If you have any questions you'd like to ask, please send them in via the WhatsApp, the email address ahkamsos@imamhussein.tv. You can give us a call in the studio 0203-515-0199. And if you're watching on Facebook Live or you're watching on YouTube, put your questions in the comment section, and inshallah, the technical team, they'll be able to send it to me, and we'll be able to discuss and answer your questions. I'm your host, Mohsin Shah, and joining me is Sheikh Ali Maash. Assalamu alaikum, Sheikhna.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
How are we doing tonight, Sheikhna?
Alhamdulillah, fine.
Fantastic. Sheikhna, they used to say London was paved with, streets of gold, and that you would always, could find money and so forth. And in today's day and age, we do find money on the road and on the streets. Now, Sheikh, if we find money on the floor, how are we to deal with this Islamically? As in, can we claim it as our own possession? Are we to give it to charity? There's a thing here in the UK where if you find something, you go to the police, you advertise it for 24 hours. If it's not collected within 24 hours, then it's yours. Islamically speaking, how do we deal with lost property, especially when it comes to money, lost money?
أعوذ بالله السميع العليم من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله على محمد وآله الطاهرين ولعنة الله على أعدائهم أجمعين. If the money found has no distinctive signs, just a pure money, notes, for example, coins, which has no signs, unlike the ring we spoke about, unlike a necklace, for example, unlike bags or purses and so forth, wallets, for example. In this case, the one is allowed to own that money, but as a mustahab precaution, the one, if they can give this to a poor individual, to the charity, for example, on behalf of the owner. So, best thing to give it to the charity.
Ahsan. Sheikh, if a lender makes it a condition to the borrower that you have to give me back more than I gave you. For example, if I lend someone 10 kg of rice, but I request or demand that you have to give me back 12 kg of rice, is this acceptable?
This is riba, or usury, in other words, and it is prohibited and it's haram to do so. This kind of transaction must be avoided, and the mu'minin should be careful with when they buy and sell items which are weighted, like the rice you mentioned, barley, wheat, and so forth. You can't exchange with excess. So, because the extra would be riba, so one should be careful.
Sheikh, according to Ayatollah, His Eminence Grand Ayatollah Sheikh Wahid Khorasani, when we perform tayammum, are we to wipe our eyebrows or are we just to go up to the eyebrows?
The Sheikh mentions that as a precaution, as ihtiyat, one should wipe on his eyebrows or her eyebrows for the tayammum.
I see. Sheikh, according to His Eminence the Grand Ayatollah Sheikh Bashir al-Najafi, if one has an injured arm and he's wearing a splint. Now, there's nothing here mentioned about a plaster, just a splint, a sling or so forth. How does one perform the wudu in that situation?
The Sheikh mentions that initially you wash the uncovered parts of the
of the arm, the exposed parts of the arm.
Yeah, just wash it as normal. And when you reach the splint part, you gently wipe on it as you wipe on your head or feet.
Yes.
And that is known as wudu al-jabiri. The splint wudu, in which you have to basically not to wash but to wipe gently on the splint or the plaster, for example, and so forth. Any wound which is covered, you just have to gently wipe on it. And then, of course, you continue to wash of your arms.
Yes, inshallah. Sheikh, let's take some questions that are coming from our viewers. Assalamu alaikum. Often in Jalus processions, we see the men take off their shirts to perform matam and azadari. Is this allowed from a male hijab perspective because there are non-mahrams around? That's from YouTube.
It is wajib for the ladies not to look at the body of the men. It's the wajib comes on the ladies, which would prevent from this act. Otherwise, we have many sports in the Islamic states, in Islamic nation, in which they have wrestling, let's say in Iran, Iraq, other places, and they show this on TV. So is this haram or halal? So the whole issue is to do with intentional look of the ladies. They can't look at the bare chest and body of the man.
No problem. Another question from YouTube. Where is the Mus'haf of Fatima? Sheikh, correct me if I'm wrong, the Mus'haf of Fatima was the discussion she had with the angel Jibreel after the death of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and Imam Ali alayhi salam was there dictating, writing down the conversation. We believe it's with the Imam Zaman, inshallah, yes?
Yes, indeed. I mean, we have a problem here with Ahlul Sunnah, in which they would say that you have another Quran, a second Quran called Mus'haf Fatima, and that's not Quran. These are foretellings of what's going to happen in the future, for example. So it's not a different Quran. So that's some kind of accusation against the Shia, that you have another Quran called Mus'haf Fatima, and that's not true.
I see. Hassan. Another one from one of our viewers. Is it permissible to celebrate the death of the enemies of the Ahlul Bayt, such as Khalid ibn Walid and Yazid ibn Muawiyah?
You see, we have the hadith which says that our Shia, they would commemorate our sad occasions and they would celebrate our happy occasions. And of course, when an enemy of Allah Azza wa Jal, who killed Ahlul Bayt, has been killed or assassinated or died, of course that is the day of joy for Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam, in which they would see that on this day, particularly this enemy of Allah Azza wa Jal, now he's facing his fate, and that is in hellfire. So he's gonna basically pay for what he did against Allah Azza wa Jal, the Deen Allah Azza wa Jal, against the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, against the Quran, against Ahlul Bayt, who represented Allah's faith and religion on earth. So of course the one basically should show this happiness and joyfulness.
Ahsan. Sheikh, is it permissible to deal with a property whose owner has died but still owes others money? Also, can one perform the salah in such a property?
Well, initially it is forbidden for the one to deal with such property in which the owners are now the inheritors. Yes, the individual has died, passed away. So the one who owns this property now, the sons and daughters of this deceased. So you have no right to deal in anyhow with this property. It's got now new owners, and they are the heirs, the inheritors. So no, you can't. Also, the salah as a precaution is also batil. You cannot pray in this place. It's like a ghasb, it's like usurp.
Wow.
You have to ask the permission from the owners in order to make and do any dealings or any ibadah and so forth.
Sheikh, many big companies and businesses in the West employ large numbers of employees who work in offices about whose ownership they have no idea. So what is the ruling on praying in those offices and using the water for wudu?
Basically, you as an employee, you have signed a contract with the company to work in this place. So, and you have no idea about who owns this office or this land, for example. Is it USAB land and so forth? We don't know. So, why should we basically go into such details in which we're not required to?
Mm-hmm.
So, there's a hadith from Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam. He says, كل شيء فيه حلال وحرام فهو لك حلال. Anything that you see has haram and halal, you're in doubt. Is it halal? Is it haram? Then it is halal for you, because you have no certainty that this land is usurped. This place is a haram place to be used for work, for whatever, study. You're in doubt, basically. Then the Imam says, حتى تعرف الحرام منه بعينه فتدعه. Until you are certain that this place or this thing is haram, is forbidden, it's been stolen, robbed, usurped, then you leave it and you abandon it and you ignore it. If you're certain, then of course you can't pray. As the previous question about praying in a place in which you have no authority, you don't own it.
Mm-hmm.
It's for somebody else. And the salah in such a place is batil, as a precaution. Because you have to ask permission from the owners.
Mm-hmm.
So basically here, the same thing. Anything is halal unless you are sure it's haram. Any land you can go and pray. But if you pray in a place that requires consent, permission from the owners, and you have to ask for that. You can't just go and pray there. So basically, the individual doesn't need to ask for details. As long as he knew that he's been working in this place as an office, for example, he's been given this job, so he doesn't know if this place is ghasab, is it usurped or not. Then of course, كل شيء لك حلال فيه حلال وحرام فهو لك حلال. Then it's halal, unless you're certain that this place is usurped.
Ahsantum. Sheikh, more questions coming in from our viewers. Assalamu alaikum, Sheikh.
Salam.
Is it permissible to follow the ruling of another marja without changing the taqleed niyyah from the one being followed initially? Jazakallah khairun. So if I'm following one marja and then I hear another fatwa from another marja and I follow that one, but I'm not following marja B, I'm still following marja A, is this acceptable? Is this okay?
In overall, the ulama would not accept this notion, and you cannot change your marja' for certain fatawa unless your marja' has given ihtiyat wujubi, not fatwa, but ihtiyat wujubi
on the
ruling. Then you can go back to another marja'
Yes.
who is, let's say, a'lam, for example, who basically has a different opinion with this regard, and you take the other marja''s fatwa.
Yes.
But just to jump from one to another, no, you're not allowed.
Sheikh, from Facebook, is it permissible for a person to have sexual intercourse with his wife from the back? I think this is in reference to anal intercourse, and we've discussed many times, highly makruh, and because of the health disadvantages and so forth. Another one, what is the position on Aqil and Jafar ibn Abi Talib and their children? Are they the Ahlul Bayt? That's from YouTube as well.
In overall, does it mean they're Ahlul Bayt?
These were the brothers of Imam Ali. For them and their
Yes.
children, are they part of the Ahlul Bayt?
They're
They're definitely part of Bani Hashim. No?
There's discussion of the Bani Hashim being, the Sada and so forth.
Okay.
But the lineage comes from Fatima alayhi salam,
Salam
because
alayha.
this is the exception for Fatima alayhi salam, in which the Sada, as we have today, the Musawi, the Naqawi, Taqawi, Husseini, and so forth, they are Sada through Al-Hussein alayhi salam, or Al-Hassan. We have Hassan as well.
Yes.
To Fatima alayhi salam, and from Fatima to Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alayhi.
Yes.
So they are the top, in other words, in Siyada.
Another one from one of our viewers. Could we allow ourselves, our children, Abdul Hadi, Abdul Jawad, Abdul Hussein, etc.? Are we allowed to? Okay. Can we call our children Abdul Hadi, Abdul Jawad, Abdul Hussein, and etc.?
Yes, of course, that's not an issue. I mean, it doesn't mean that you're worshipping Hadi or you're worshipping that the one you call it Abdul Hadi, for example, or Abdul Mahdi, for example. I think there's a verse in the Holy Quran, وَأَنْكِحُوا الْأَيَامَ, and then there's مِنْ عِبَادِكُمْ, something from those amongst you who are slaves, مِنْ عِبَادِكُمْ. So it's not an issue because we don't recognize them as, slaves being like they are slaves of na'udhu billah, a part of Allah Azza wa Jal. That is Abdul Hadi means sharik with Allah Azza wa Jal, na'udhu billah. No, that's not the way.
I see.
So there's a difference, as mentioned before, that sometimes in Arabic we use a word, it could be used for Allah Azza wa Jal. Allah is alim, knowledgeable, and the scholar is alim as well. But there's a big difference between ilmullah, which is infinite, which is laysa kamithlihi shay, nothing is like him, and ilm of an individual who has gained it through study, research, and so forth. And that's abid, slave. We have ahkam of abid, of the slaves. Abd filan, abid kada, abid of his master. He's slave of his master. Slavery, for example. So there's a slavery for the human beings and the slavery for Allah Azza wa Jalla. There's a difference.
Sheikh, now my sister found money on the ground while walking to Imam Ali alayhi salam's shrine. We didn't know who it belonged to because there was so many people there. So instead, we put it in a donation box. Was this correct?
Yes, indeed. I just mentioned a few minutes ago that, yes, if you find the money with no signs, with no, as I mentioned, significant features or signs, then of course you can own it, or the better, as the lady did or the sister did, to give it as sadaqah or donation.
And is there a certain amount, or it doesn't matter how much you find?
It doesn't matter.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Oh, excellent. Sheikh, a really good question here. Who has the right of issuing the verdict and the obligation of jihad? And I'm assuming this is to do with war and Islamic jihad, where you have to bear arms and go and fight.
Yes, the Ma'asum alayhi salam, from Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, to the Imam alayhi salam, the 12 Imams, they have the right to issue the verdict of the war, and also their direct or specific appointed representatives, wakala of the Imam alayhi salam, and you have the general reps, which are the maraja and the ulama. And these would be basically of a defensive jihad, in other words, to protect the land and the wealth of the Muslims and even non-Muslims if they live within the Islamic territory. So they would issue this fatwa. As mentioned, we saw this, the fatwa of the Marja'iyya in Najaf against ISIS 4 or 5 years ago, in which they defended Iraq, the Muqaddasat, they defended Karbala and Najaf with their sacrifice. Over 70,000 shaheed that we gave in Iraq to defeat Daesh and ISIS, the enemies of Allah Azza wa Jal. Because if you go back to the history, about 150 years ago, less or more, Wahhabis invaded Karbala and they killed over 5,000 residents of Karbala, men, women and children. They killed them and they destroyed the Haram and so forth. So we had to go for defending our land. We had no choice. So that's why you see that if there's fatwa, is for defending the land, defending the religion, defending the shrines and the holy sacred locations.
I see. MashaAllah. Sheikhna, is the money put into charity boxes considered to be sadaqah, in the opinion of His Eminence the Grand Ayatollah Ishaq al-Fiyad?
The Sheikh mentions that it is not considered as sadaqah unless it reaches the hands of the poor, or the one who represents the poor. But in any house, some wouldn't accept it, and they would say no, even though as long as you put the money inside that box, khalas, it's now considered to be as sadaqah. You can't touch it, in other words.
Sheikh, more questions coming in from our viewers. Can the wife spend money of the husband without him knowing and ask for money from the husband whenever she wants?
Again, there must be some kind of mutual agreement, because you have to ask permission. You can't take his money for your own expenses. At the end of the day, this is the money in which the husband with efforts, with lots of hours spent at work to gain this money. So yes, I mean the one should basically ask permission before spending.
Also, a question from YouTube, Sheikh. I think this one is really important actually. If the Mus'haf of Fatima is with the Imam of our time, is that Imam al-Mahdi alayhi salam? And if he does not know he is al-Mahdi, would he not know his identity if he has the Mus'haf of Fatima? This is from YouTube. Sheikh, from the school of the Ahlul Bayt, we don't believe that any of our Imams or any of our Prophets did not know who they were or their status or their role when it came to Islam, no?
Very strange. I mean, we know ourselves who we are.
Yes.
And what is our status, our talents, our degree in terms of knowledge that we gained or the profession that we have. He is Imam al-Ma'soom alayhi salam. Allah rep on earth. Without him, Allah would, ala kulli hal, would not keep this world in safety, because the hadith says, لولا الحجة لساخت الأرض بأهلها. Without being the hujjah, without having the proof of Allah on earth, from prophets to Imams alayhim salam, this earth would not remain in safety. So the Imam, of course, he is Allah's representative and he knows his duty, his wajib to be. Now, for this time, he needs to be in disappearance. Allah's maslahah, Allah's wisdom, Allah's hikmah, that to be in disappearance. Because if he comes within the population, he would be killed, as they killed his grandfathers. Imam Hussein was slaughtered, Imam Ali was struck on his head, and so forth. So Allah saw the hikmah to hide him or to disappear him until the time given in which he would, inshaAllah, reappear and fill the world with justice and fairness after it was filled with tyranny and oppression.
Another one from YouTube, Sheikh. Assalamu alaikum. Why have our scholars considered tattoos as permissible? What is the interpretation of the Quranic verse which tells us the Quran tries to lead us to change our bodies? This is from YouTube.
Basically, what is the evidence? Because the ulama look for the evidence. The evidence in which they can give fatwa or verdict that tattoo is haram or smoking is haram, for example. They have the evidence. نحن أصحاب الدليل. They look for dalil, for evidence. If there's no evidence that smoking is haram, they can't say smoking is haram, for example.
Yes.
Or tattoo is haram. There has to be evidence. So if they find evidence which says this is haram, then of course they would give the verdict, the fatwa is haram. As we said with chess, different narrations which says that chess is haram in different forms, in different phrases. Alcohol, the same thing, even the Quran, alcohol is mentioned, zina, and so forth. You have to have a strong evidence which says that tattoo is haram or smoking is haram. Then you can give the fatwa. Otherwise, you can't.
Sheikh, some would argue that, okay, but at that time there was no smoking, or at that time there was no tattoos, so you're not really going to find much evidence anyway to say that these things are haram.
That's why they have what is known as usul al-amaliyah. Usul al-amaliyah comes in practice when you don't have anything in your hand as evidence.
Yes.
So we have ihtiyat, bara'a, and other two, in which they would apply this, implement this when you have no evidence. So they say, okay, this is halal because we have no evidence.
Yes.
So bara'a from, ihtiyat, it might be something around, we take ihtiyat, don't eat it, don't drink it, and so forth. As I think we said with the kangaroo's meat, that they made some ulama that it's ihtiyat wujubi. That kangaroo's meat is haram. Exactly.
We're not sure, so better stay away from it.
So they would take the usul amaliyah in this case. Ihtiyat, don't eat this type of meat because it could be haram.
Yes. And it's vice versa for the Jummah prayer, because normally Jummah prayer is like wajib in the time of the Imam of our time. So it is better to pray and then pray your dhuhr as well, ihtiyat, just in case.
Sometimes you have two different narrations. Now this comes in the subject of ta'arud. You have ta'arud, conflict of a hadith, that wajib, mustahab, and so forth. Now they would come into this
mashallah.
subject.
We're turning this into a Hausa class. A quick one here, Sheikhna. Assalamu alaikum. I've heard that whilst praying, you can go and open the door if, for example, the postman rings the door. Surely this can't be true and would render the namaz void.
Of course, the salah would be batil if the posture of salah has been changed. We said this many times. You cannot basically do acts in which eventually change the posture of salah, which renders the salah eventually batil.
Sheikhna, who has the right in issuing, oh no, we've done that one. Why do we see slight variations in the words in the book of supplications and ziyarah? For example, in the case of ziyarah Ashura, we have to grant me the revenge along with Imam Mahdi. Whereas in other versions, to grant me the revenge along with Imam Huda. Why is this different, and which one should we follow?
This difference comes because of the different copies available. Because in the old days, they used to write copy. There were no printers, massive printing.
Yes.
So they used to write down, hire people to write. Those who can write fast, for example, and neat and with nice writing. So sometimes the writers would make a mistake or from the rawi. Anyhow, there's something, things might be changed from the narrator or the writer, for example, the one who does the copying. In anyhow, there's no issue with such differences, and the one is rewarded, inshallah, for this reading.
Ahsan. Sheikhna, is the claim that Europeans were the first to call for freedom correct?
It's not really true, because Islam, in that time, as we saw and read in the history, that's how Islam provided freedom from the beginning of the da'wah of Islam. قُولُوا لَا إِلَى اللَّهِ تُفْلِحُوا. The Holy Prophet ﷺ came to free people from the worship of the idols and statues. لِيَضَعْ عَنْهُمْ إِصْرَهُمْ وَالْأَغْلَالَ الَّتِي كَانَتْ عَلَيْهِمْ. To remove those shackles of jahiliyyah, of slavery. As I've said, Islam worked very hard to remove and repel this slavery from the nation. So by offering, giving some kind of rules about kafara and so forth, that you have to free slave if you eat intentionally in the month of Ramadan, for example. So no, the freedom started from Islam, definitely, 14th century ago.
Okay.
And eventually moved forward. But of course, when you see the tyrants take over in the name of Islam or in the name of other religions, and they deviate the right path to the wrong path, of course, now you have the freedom being taken away, and eventually others might come. They could be from the north or east or the west who would implement some of these freedoms in their country, in which you would see democracy in to some extent, freedom to some extent, human rights to some extent, animal rights to some extent. Anyhow.
Sheikh, we're going to go to a short break right now, inshallah. We'll continue our discussion after the break on here on Ahkam SOS.
I have a question regarding keeping pictures of scholars. Is it permissible to plant trees by or over
Islam
the
established based on peace and non-violence?
Is it permissible to collect donations for charity projects from
Is it permitted to consume canned food imported from non-Muslim countries?
Is there an issue for men looking at non-Muslim women?
To have your questions answered live, call in on +44 2035 150199 or WhatsApp us on +44 7415 092155. Alternatively, you can also email us on ahkamsos@imamhussein.tv.
Yes, those are the ways you can contact us and send in your questions. Any questions you have in regards to any sort of Islamic fiqh whatsoever, whether it's to do with diet, nutrition, fitness, business, finance, whatever topic, whatever question you have, send them in via the WhatsApp, the email address. If you're watching on Facebook or you're watching on YouTube, send it in the comment section. If you guys have TikTok, follow us on TikTok at Ahkam SOS. We have so much different material, and we are very, very active on TikTok, and we do interact with our viewers and our followers on TikTok. So follow us there. You can ask your questions on TikTok, and inshallah we will respond. Assalamu alaikum, Sheikhna.
Alaikum assalam.
Sheikh, now before we go to our Shia Plus video, let's ask another question from one of our viewers, inshallah. And that is, okay, we've discussed this before. Is Bitcoin haram? As far as we know, this is still being researched, and there's only one marja, Sheikh Wahid Khurasani, I believe, who says it is haram.
I think we mentioned it was Ayatollah Fayyad.
Okay, Isaac Fayyad says it.
Which is it's haram, yeah.
Okay.
I think Ayatollah Shirazi says halal. So it's been still discussed and argued because it's a new way of trading, isn't it?
They don't know what it is, to be honest. They're still researching, see where it falls under, and what Islamic rules actually apply to it. So it's still up in the air at the moment. Another question from one of our viewers, Sheikhna. Are jinns real and do they interact with us humans? And if yes, what are they scared of Quran? And can a good jinn manifest a person? Thanks, Sheikhna.
Basically, go back to the Surah Al-Jinn in the Holy Quran and read the tafsir and the translation. That will, inshallah, make things clear, inshallah.
Inshallah. Sheikhna, let's go to our Shia Plus video and see how we can help our Shabab this week, inshallah.
Oh, I'm wearing socks. Can I wipe on top of the socks?
Sheikhna, wudu, doing a mas'ah. Can we perform mas'ah on top of our socks? The water's still going to go through and touch the skin.
It is not permissible. The one should do the wiping or the masah on the feet, on the skin, and not on the socks or the shoes. Otherwise, it's batil. The wudu is batil. So the one must wipe and wash on the skin. فَامْسَحُوا بِرُؤُوسِكُمْ وَأَرْجُلَكُمْ. So you have to wipe on the head and on the feet, and not on the shoes or on your hat.
I see. MashaAllah. Sheikhna, what does Islam say about those governments that confiscate people's property or suppress their freedoms?
It's not permissible to confiscate people's property or to take away their freedom. Allah Azza wa Jalla created the human being as free, and you cannot restrict human beings in anyhow. Just like that, you can't detain or deport those individuals. Allah, as you can see, Azza wa Jal created animals. They freely roam and they migrate from one place to another without anyone asking for their passports, for their visas. These are all recently made, man-made rules, passports, visas, so much. And then you have, on top of it, the COVID rules as well. So Allah Azza wa Jal made the human being to be free. And just over a century ago, humans in somehow they were free in terms of migration, transportation. They had the freedom to go to anywhere. I remember one of the ulama in Karbala about 78 years ago, he took a car from Karbala to Mecca.
Wow,
straight up. That's it. No visa, no passports. So that's against the freedom of the human being, that I can't visit as a Muslim another Muslim country except with visa, except with such and such rules. It's very sad.
Indeed. Sheikh, can a Muslim call a person who is not from his ethnicity a foreigner?
You see, a foreigner in Islam is said for the one who is not a Muslim. In other words, he's not from the Millat al-Muslimin, from different millah, different faith and religion. So it is not permissible to call the Muslims, if you are a Pakistani and I'm Iraqi and he's Iranian, and we come to each other's countries, visit as zuwar of the holy places, you call them that, they are foreigners. That's not allowed. We're all Muslims.
Sheikh, now when are the confessions of a prisoner admitting his guilt considered valid such that it is possible to convict him?
With two conditions. Number one, he should be outside the prison. And number two, he should basically speak with complete freedom, with no torture, with no threat and so forth.
I see. Ahsan. Sheikh, I'm bombarded here with questions, inshallah, from all our viewers. Let's get through them. Sheikhna, are there any verses in the Holy Quran mentioning that we shouldn't copy things from the Ahlul Kitab, right? The Sunnis who copy the Majusi and Jews in prayers, for example?
I can't remember in the Holy Quran, but there's a narration by Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam that he said to the companions that one day it will come in which that you would follow them حذو النعل بالنعل والقدة بالقدة. You would follow them on their footsteps, in other words, wherever they go. حتى لو دخلوا في جحر دخلتموه. Even if they go to a hole, you would go inside that as well, to this extent. So yes, today's Muslims, in overall, I don't say all of them, but what we see today as a result of this suppression, oppression, dictatorship in the Muslim countries, yes, indeed, they have followed those, of course.
Assalamu alaikum, Sheikhna. What is the Sheikh's opinion on Abu Lu'lu, the killer of the second Khalif? Does the Sheikh believe Abu Lu'lu was Muslim?
Definitely, it is mentioned in one of the Sunni sources. I can't remember the book, but when one of the people who followed after the assassination of Umar ibn Khattab, they went and they killed his daughter, his Lu'lu'a or Lu'lu', I think her name was. They killed his daughter, and the writer was Sunni writer. He wrote in his book that وكانت تدعي الإسلام أو تدعي الإسلام, in this phrases that she was embracing Islam or believing in Islam. In other words, Abu Lu'lu was a Muslim,
yes,
and of course a believer and follower of Imam Ali alayhi salam, a mu'min. And what he did, of course, as I've said, when the enemies of Allah Azza wa Jal kill Ahlul Bayt, there must be على كل حال somebody to come forward and protect them and defend Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam in anyhow. And we saw Ashab al-Hussein on day of Ashura, they killed many of the enemies. If they had the chance, they would kill Ibn Ziyad, they would kill Ibn Sa'ad, Shimr, and so forth. They did their best to defend Al Muhammad salamu alayhi.
MashaAllah. Assalamu alaikum. How do I end a Muta contract early if needed and my Muta wife agrees to it? Is this something you recite?
Yes, you have to say that وَهَبْتُ لَكِ الْمُدَّةِ, something like that. So
you would refer back to the marriage books, and there you will find it there. How can I help my Imam Mahdi, may Allah Hussein repentance, as much as possible? How can I find him and help him, as our scholars who have met him without knowing it, and it was him until later?
You have to start from yourself. Initially, self-building, taqwa, wara', God-fearing, implementing the wajib, refraining the haram. Start from yourself, from the point in which others started, ulama, in which they have elevated, perfection, reaching that stage of perfection. Try to perfect yourself spiritually, in terms of aqeedah, in terms of ahkam, in terms of worship, and everything, all aspects.
Sheikh, a question from WhatsApp. Could a female initiate Muta to seek her satisfaction? I think there is no issue with a male or female seeking marriage, whether it is temporary or permanent one. Yes?
Of course, part of marriage is to fulfill this pleasure. Allah Azza wa Jalla created this inside the human being, the shahwa, the desire, the lust. So the one should fulfill it in the halal and correct way, and not the haram way. And that's why we have the marriage, be it long term or short term.
Okay, Sheikhna, assalamu alaikum. In fiqh Jafriya, what is the official way of divorcing a lady? A sister has been sent 3 divorce documents separated by a month each. So every month she received a divorce document. Husband contacted 2 Mulanas with different opinions. Okay, so the husband has contacted 2 other sheikhs, and they had a different opinion on how to actually perform the divorce. So what's the official way of divorcing a lady?
I mean, the brother needs to go back, or the lady needs to go back to experts in this field in terms of the marriage to discuss in depth, to sit down with the individual.
Okay, so first of all, they need to discuss whether there is a grounds for a divorce or not.
Exactly.
Depending on which side it's coming from. And then from there, I think two witnesses.
Two witnesses and
then-
other conditions with regards to the talaq, divorce. From the woman's side, to be in her purity, in which there were no intercourse. في طهر لم يطأه الزوج. And then the Mawlana would take the ijazah to perform the divorce. زوجة فلانة طالق, and the witness are sitting and listening to this talaq. That's it. He repeats 20 times and that's it.
Assalamu alaikum, Sheikh. Can I gain commission from operating a travel group to the holy shrines? Sheikh, a lot of people actually do this and take a salary from it to take people on Ziyara and so forth, selling tickets on behalf of airlines and taking commission for people who want to go for Umrah, Hajj, Ziyara of Amir al-Mu'mineen, Ziyara of Karbala and so forth. Is this jaiz?
Yes, of course, indeed. There's no issue with it.
Okay. Assalamu alaikum, Shaykhna. My question is, when a religion fully settles in a person, what position will he attain?
What we have is, you see, the taqwa, the wara' an maharimillah. These are all mentioned in the narrations of Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam. Ittaqullah, many verses in the Holy Quran. Taqwa, insisting and emphasizing on taqwa. To be a good believer, a good Muslim, to settle this faith in yourself, you must have taqwa. And taqwa means to implement the wajib and refrain from the haram.
Yes.
And then, of course, on top of it, you have to make sure you built this foundation before the taqwa, and this is the aqidah and the belief. You have a strong belief. You know, you might find somebody who is muttaqi, pious, implement the wajib, leave the haram, but his aqidah is bad.
I see.
He's let's say, he takes the philosophical notions and ideologies, which is batil in somehow.
Sheikh, another question here. Since the other non-12 sects have the ruling of disbelievers when the Mahdi alayhi salam arrives, what will happen to them under his caliphate?
So the non-Shias.
So the non-Shias, what will happen? The non-Shias who rule over the disbelievers, what will happen to them when Imam al-Zaman establishes caliphate?
Of course, there are a lot of details with this regard. I mean, no one should. We have more time and episodes to discuss this matter. But in overall, when the Imam comes, Isa alayhi salam would also descend from the heavens and praise with the Imam alayhi salam, behind the Imam.
Yes.
And so forth, the Christians would follow. Isa alayhi salam would become Muslims and so forth. The majority would accept the Imam's movement and reappearance, would believe. Only the minority would fight the Imam. Enemies of Allah Azza wa Jal, in which they would fight the Imam, and of course there would be a war in that time, but things will settle afterwards.
Shaykhna, if what Abu Lu'lu did was right, why did Muslim Ibn Aqil not do the same to Ibn Ziyad when he hid in his room and had the chance?
Ibn Aqil mentioned this to, I think, to Hani or others who were supporting him, that I remember the hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam saying, "Al-Islam, it's against because this type of killing is some kind of deceiving killing. In other words, you're hiding from behind. You come and kill him, for example, and he's guest in the house of the, I think Hani bin Urwa or the others." So the way it was some kind of deceiving way to kill Ibn Ziyad. Al-Islam qayyad al-fatk. Yeah, so there's some kind of restriction with regards to restraint towards this type of killing, a deceiving killing from behind as a guest and so forth.
Okay. Final question for this evening, Shaykhna. Salam, my question is religion a problem?
Not the religion, but the people who believe or who are religious, some of them, of course, as I've said, causing trouble. We have people from all religions who are extremists, from the Muslims, from Hindus, from Christians, Jews, and so forth, all the way, even to the non-Muslims or non-believers, atheists, and so forth. The problem is with the human being. وَقَلِيلٌ مِنْ عِبَادِي الشَّكُورِ. Only few are thankful. وَأَكْثَرُهُمْ لِلْحَقِّ كَارِهُونَ. And the majority hate the haqq, hate the truth. This is the problem of the humanity and not the religions. Allah sent the religions, Ibrahim, Musa, Isa, the Shariah, but they rejected. Human beings rejected. In the narration mentioned, I think in the Bihar and others, that Bani Israel used to kill 70 prophets a day.
Wow.
They used to kill them. That's the problem with the human beings and not the religions. Of course, the religions in which were deviated, of course, we have to also appreciate the fact that they played this role as well. But those who deviated the religion, also there were people, human beings, who changed the aqidah and belief. And that's why we have lots of issues with the those who changed, took the Khilafah from Imam Ali alayhi salam and killed Ahlul Bayt eventually.
Yes. Ahsan. Sheikh, thank you so much for all your efforts and then all of your research that you do. And thank you to all of you for joining us on this episode of Ahkam SOS. Myself and the Sheikh will be back next week on Monday, 6:30 here on Imam Hussein TV3. If we did not get to read your question, we do apologize. We had so many questions coming in. And inshallah, we will discuss those questions on Monday's episode, 6:30 here on Imam Hussein TV3. See you then. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah wa barakatuh.
We question our daily position, seeking answers and definitions. Get the queries off your chest with Ahkam SOS.
Whilst this winter many of you will be enjoying the festive season, Afghanistan is going through a crisis. Every winter the weather will reach temperatures as low as -18 degrees Celsius. With little finances and homes not adequate enough to keep the heat in, many families struggle during this season. The elderly are vulnerable and physically challenged to fight the cold during these days and nights. Young children must walk through snow and ice in order to get to school and return to a chilly and bitter cold home. Imam Hussein Development and Relief Foundation are determined to help. We will be providing households with coal to burn throughout the winter. $150 is all we need. $150 will be enough to provide heat and warmth for one household for the whole of winter. That's $150 for 4 months. You can donate via PayPal, bank transfer, or visit us at www.ihdrf.org to make a donation. Our Imams tell us the best of you are those who help those who are desperate. Help us spread the warmth. Thank you.
IHDRF is proud to announce the launch of its app, Sadaqah. Sadaqah is a modern, easy, and interactive way for you to pay your charity. Your Sadaqah can be transferred instantly and directly start helping orphans. Furthermore, you can donate to different projects such as clothing orphans, supplying clean water, heating fuel for the winter, and feeding the hungry. When you pay your Sadaqah, it will be used to feed, clothe, and school orphans. Our app is accessible via the App Store and Google Play Store. Download today and pay your Sadaqah.
Have a duty towards the preservation and the propagation of the message of Imam Hussein alayhi salam. Indeed, one of the best ways to work towards the reappearance of Imam al-Mahdi ajjalallahu ta'ala farajul sharif is through promoting the values of Karbala. Imam Hussein Media Group is the only Shia television network that broadcasts globally in 5 different languages: Arabic, Farsi, Turkish, Urdu, and English. We are appealing to the lovers of Imam Hussein alayhi salam worldwide to support the channel such that it may continue its global operations. Imam Hussein Media Group is seeking 1,000 partners to pledge to a £14 contribution per month. This will allow the channel to sustain its operating costs as we continue to spread the message of Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam in multiple languages across the globe. You be a part of this great legacy and donate today. You can pledge in two ways. www.imamhussein3.tv/donate will take you direct to our donation page where you can pledge monthly. Or you can call or WhatsApp us on 0044 793 9917163. Imam Hussein TV, your gateway to Karbala.
Fatima is a part of me. Whoever angers her angers me.
Sayyidah Fatima al-Zahra, Salamullahi alayha, has a great and tragic story. Throughout the year, we commemorate the calamities that befell her eminence.